Creative Mornings Baltimore, please help me welcome Maggie to the Creative Mornings stage.
How are y'all feeling today? Thank you so much for having me this morning. It's a total honor to be speaking to you today about a topic that left me kind of like a deer in the headlights when Kira offered it up as a potential topic to speak on. So the idea of critical is something that resonates really deeply with me on a personal level, and it's something that is really rooted in my upbringing. So as Kira said, you know, my family's Colombian. I was raised in South Florida, and I was raised to be very critical, and especially of myself. And so these things were, the criticism that I grew up with was something that I really associated as a love language, to be honest. So when I hear the term gorda, I don't think about imperfection from a sense of insecurity or anything like that. I think about gorda, I think about love, I think about my mother, I think about the softness of holding her and the softness that she felt holding me as a young person who loved to sit and eat cookie dough while watching 3 hours of The Simpsons with my brother. So when I hear the term perezosa, I don't think about laziness in the sense of I am lazy. I think of it in the sense of I could do more, and you are resting, and you have a lot of potential, and maybe this B on your report card is a sign that you were probably not paying any attention to what was going on and phoned it in. So these thoughts of criticism were drivers for me. They were things that pushed me to work harder, pushed me to challenge myself, and pushed me to be in constant competition, not with others, but with my own expectations of myself, and sometimes unrealistic expectations of myself and self-image. And I utilize criticism as really as a superpower to kind of catapult me forward and challenge myself to put myself in spaces in which I didn't always feel comfortable. So I, very shortly after graduating high school, I moved out of South Florida. I moved into a community that was predominantly white and very segregated. It was in the panhandle of Florida, which was essentially very southern, very racist. And I always just kind of got comfortable just being in those spaces, just being uncomfortable, just being the best that I could be at any point in time. And I also really just challenged myself to utilize this superpower as a tool to actually create, period, right? So my creative practice developed around critique. My creative practice developed around how do you refine, how do you really hone a performance, how do you really hone a vision as a director. So I got very deeply involved in theater, and that's what I actually went to study at Florida State. And I found my fellow critics as my collaborators, and I really found myself gravitating towards people who would criticize, who would challenge, who would sort of had a bit of contempt really for the medium and wanted to see it push further. And I actually started to stage and production manage as a career as well, because I found that as a way that I could use that sort of like laser focus on like what could improve to improve not only my own work but the work of others. So this idea, this sort of like running spiral that I had going on of that is late, that is off, you missed that, this could be stronger, you aren't doing what you need to be doing. Try again, push harder. This was a discipline. And I pushed everybody around me to do that as well. And what I didn't know at the time was that the people around me did not necessarily have the same level of resilience for that barrage of feedback that I was delivering to them, to push them to get this, to get their work to be sharper, to be stronger. And I found myself working with people who I was actually harming people that I cared about very deeply. People who, I had an assistant very early on who I remember being in tears because I kept giving her feedback about the fact that these cues were late, these things were not happening when they needed to happen. And I didn't understand. I was like, well, didn't you grow up like just constantly like going into this barrage of feedback? And the answer was no. And so I realized that I really needed to develop my empathy for others. But most of all, I needed to develop my empathy for myself. So I wasn't forgiving myself. I wasn't seeing any of the successes that I was having in my career. I wasn't seeing any of the successes that I was having creatively. I couldn't accept positive feedback. I just couldn't do it. And I found myself in this spiral of negativity, in this toxic relationship with my own self-image, where I just couldn't appreciate it and I couldn't see beyond it. I did have to take a step back at a certain point to try to understand, like, where's the joy in this? Like, for a while, it was creating pieces that responded to this, great pieces like, and you're just not good enough. But I stopped creating, right? I stopped actually producing things and finding joy in the work not only of myself but of others. I couldn't go see a performance without seeing all the flaws, and I couldn't appreciate what was going on around me. And it's something that didn't happen in a moment in time, but rather just sensing this pattern, So I'm sensing, okay, you're just like focusing on this work and all these flaws, and then I'm even just like looking back in my cell phone to see like, ooh, all of these pictures on your phone, Maggie, they're all of receipts. Like, you're not taking photographs anymore. Like, you're depending on this work to fulfill you in a way or to take you further, but that's not it, right? Like, you need to reconnect with like the passion and the purpose and the love, right? And so I realized that being away from my family, not connecting that criticism back to love, back to growth, back to development, back to art, was keeping me from having joyful moments, keeping me from being in positive relationship with the people that I love the most. So to take a step back, I'd like to say that I hope that you learn from my lessons. I hope that you are able to make a list for every flaw, for every imperfection, that you're able to take account of all of the wins, because even those flaws are beautiful, and the people that you love the most deserve to hear that from you, and most of all, you need to hear it from yourself. So what was missing for me was that love to push you to grow, the recognition that that's what was needed and what was happening, the purpose of sort of carving away at the thing, not to the point where there's nothing left and there's no service of the vision. There's where you're left with just nothing but dust, but really keeping that vision in focus and making sure that any critique that's happening is happening in service of you getting closer to that vision. So I want to also just kind of take a step back and say that I really have started to shift that relationship back. And for me, the key has been balance. The key has been surrounding myself with people who love me and who give me that critique and push me, but from a place of care and a place of intention. And I encourage you also to surround yourself with people who affirm you, but also who challenge you, because that is how we grow. And you can tap back into that superpower. Criticism isn't a negative thing, it's an objective thing. It reflects more so on the person that's offering you the critique often than it does on the thing itself. And your perspective at any given time will change around that critique. Sometimes I find myself almost as if I'm in a funhouse mirror situation. I'm looking at all the different kinds of feedback and all the different kinds of flaws, and like, when I lose recognition of who I am and what my vision is and what my purpose is, I can't tell that it's a fun house. So I just encourage you to, again, surround yourself with people who will push you, challenge you to grow, but are doing it from a place where criticism is a love act, a love language, and not just criticism for criticism's sake. And as we look at critiquing, really thinking about critiquing the thing and not the person. And I think that's something that we could all use more of. Like, it's okay for us to not accept that things are the way they are. Things can change. And I've come to accept the fact that maybe my expectations are too high. Maybe they are unrealistic. But that's okay, because I'm growing, I'm evolving, and I never want to be satisfied with, if I'm the same person I am tomorrow as I am today, I'm not going to be satisfied, and that's okay. So that has freed me of the mental prison of my own criticism, and it has allowed me to reconnect with criticism as love.
Thanks, Maggie.
Thanks, Kira.
Wow, I feel like there's so much that resonates with me and probably resonates with you in what Maggie was sharing with us. We're going to do Q&A now, so if you have a question, we'd love to hear it. Kevin's ready, so we're just going to start there. I have questions too, but we'll just head on over to Kevin. Start it off.
I'm curious, when you said criticize the thing, not the person, could you talk a little bit more about that? Like, what is your process? Like, how do you prepare to deliver criticism and then deliver it in a way that it's heard rather than meets that surface resistance?
So early Maggie was just criticize nonstop, without filter. And to me, that was like a form of honesty and again, love. And I think that it probably made me really hard to work with, probably made me really hard to be with. I love you, babe. But what I've found to be helpful is to create containers for feedback, right? So first, really thinking about what is it that we're trying to do here? What is the goal? And what is the vision? And then that feedback isn't just constant and ungrounded. It's in context of what, again, that vision is, and creating some feedback spaces for it. So it's not just constant and doesn't become an ongoing discouragement. Because while that might be motivating for people with unhealthy relationships with their own self-image, that is not great for building the confidence and sort of leaning into what is working, right? So there's this saying that's like, what you pay attention to grows. And so if you're only paying attention to what's wrong can grow as well. And so it's just really important to also create space for that affirmation. And to just pay attention to how people are receiving it, and just like kind of responding from a place of empathy as well, which was, again, a learned thing for me. It was not something that I had the self-awareness to realize that how I was impacting others when offering that critique.
Hi, Maggie.
Hi.
I think it's amazing that this talk is happening during Virgo season, which is very much a time of critique. But I'm wondering what language you use to introduce criticism to both yourself and to others to kind of contextualize it.
So I think that I've started to just share why I'm offering the feedback more so, right? Like it's something that when I think about language of growth. This is an area in which we can develop. I see these bright spots in what you're doing, but it could be stronger if you focused more on that and leaned into those bright spots, right? Or is this necessary, right? Like, are you creating additional work for yourself, or, just asking a lot of questions, honestly. Like, I feel like oftentimes so many of us suffer with our own, like, self-image and criticism and insecurities, and so oftentimes, like, we kind of know what's not working. We kind of know when we phoned it in. We kind of know, like, hey, this is actually just, like, I just did this last minute, and, like, I'm not really present. Like, and so just opening up the space for feedback by just asking the question, like, hey, like, how did you feel this went? And people often kind of unpack that for themselves.
Hi, Maggie.
Hi.
You talked a little bit about in your talk about being in service to a vision. And I wanted you to kind of expound on what that means, and it resonated so deeply with me.
So the image that always comes to mind for me is like, if you're looking at like a piece of wood or like, I think I'm not a sculptor, but I think about it in terms of like if I'm making like with clay or anything, any object, if you're trying to like sculpt something, you see something in it, right? And then it's about editing, right? Like it's about like cutting away these things. It's like, oh, this isn't part of the face, or oh, this isn't part of the shape. And so it's like you have to see it first. And sometimes the part of like starting to pull pieces away help reveal those things in that process, which I'm definitely a fan of. But the restraint has to be there too, right? Like, because you can just end up with nothing in the end if you continue to if you don't let it go, basically. Because you could just, I think about so many pieces of work where I just like kept working on it and kept working on it and kept working on it, and then it became unrecognizable because I was trying to like incorporate all of the feedback, and then I lost sight of like, this is the core, this is the essence of it, and it's no longer there because it's like diluted by everybody else's opinion and not my own vision. Yeah. Also, shout out to Alana because she gives really good feedback. So if you ever want to talk to somebody about something you're working on, hit her up.
Maggie, thank you for sharing your experiences. I just wanted to ask, what are some of the things that you did to become a softer critic of your own work? I find that to be, one of the toughest things. When you're listening to other people criticize your work, it's always, it's them and it's not me, but you're always too harsh of a critic when you're assessing your own work. And I wanted to ask how you just tone that down.
I have to be honest and say that I'm still working on that. But things that have helped me have been, meditation, have helped me like corny, like affirmation, meditation, like do not compare yourself. You do not need to compare yourselves to others. Like your success is not defined by the success of others. That kind of level of meditation. And list making, like I'm kind of a nerd that way. Like I definitely will benefit from like a list of stuff. Like, okay, every once in a while, like I have to like, what did you do? Like, what did you actually do? What have you achieved so that you can remind yourself of who you are? And journaling, like a lot of journaling, because honestly, like I can journal out, these are all the things that are like poisoning my perspective right now, and then I can put that away and not look at it.
Hi, Maggie. Thank you so much for this talk. It's been amazing. Just listening to you sort of expound about, criticism. A question I had to ask, it's maybe a little scandalous, but in terms of a relationship, how does this work? Because I imagine as you're, sort of peeling back these different layers of self as you get deeper into your work, it brings out different versions, and then you're in partnership with someone. How does that sort of work out?
Well, he's here. Y'all can talk.
Like,
I get. I would say that honestly, like as I think about how that has impacted others, I definitely think of my husband, who bears the brunt of all of it. Like he is my family, and I am not easy. And I push him, I see all the things that he could be. I can go on and on and on, and he has to walk away at times and be like, no, like this is too much. And also, and it scares me too, honestly. Because when I see, and I like straight up might cry, but like when I see his brilliance and his light dim because of the level of feedback, we'll put it that way, that he can receive, that freaks me the fuck out. And that will stop me from continuing.
So one of the things that in your talk that just I feel like is just such a visual and turning point is when you were saying about like looking back in your camera of your phone and seeing receipts instead of moments of joy. I just want to uplift that, but then segue to. I think Maggie has a lot of receipts for being kind of like what Creative Mornings really treasures, which is like everyone is invited, everyone is creative. I think we can all agree that Maggie just really embodies a lot of that. And so that's why Mario and I were excited about her being a speaker for Creative Mornings. And the way that we approached Maggie, we weren't like critical, this is your theme, but we knew that we wanted Maggie to be a speaker, and so we presented the themes to Maggie and let her kind of pick what spoke to her. So what about this theme kind of, I mean, obviously you just did a whole talk about it, but can you talk a little bit about that moment on how you chose the word critical?
I mean, I think it kind of chose me in that sense. I think that because it's something I struggle with. Like, it's just like, and I also, like anybody, when you struggle with something, sometimes you don't want to deal with it, right? And so this was a challenge, right, to unpack some of my own shit with you all today, who I'm sure also deal with things like this. And so I appreciated the challenge. I'm also kind of introverted in a lot of ways, and so I don't really like to put myself out there. I mean, you'll see it in my work. Like I do a lot of work, but I don't really talk a lot about it, almost to a fault, honestly. I think it actually is something that I would love to see myself grow in putting myself out there and talking more about the wins, because they're there, even if I don't really like talking about them.
Who else has a question? I can't see people on the other side, so you have to be like real big if you have a question over here. I'm walking over to see you. Oh, there isn't. Well, Maggie, what do you think? I mean, you gave us so many good gems in your talk. What do you think like an action item would be for us as a Creative Mornings community to kind of think about more of this theme in your talk?
I think celebrating each other is really important. I think also not shying away from critique. It's like how we grow, and so I don't think we should be afraid of it. And I think we need to. It's not always about us, and sort of detaching ourselves from the critique. I think it's really helpful, and also we need to be more critical of the people who lead our city. We need to be more critical about the way that we all operate and treat each other. But again, like focusing on love and making sure that we're doing that from a place of believing that it can grow as well.
Well, thank you so much, Maggie, for sharing all these gems with us, being with here this morning. I know being the spotlight is not your most comfortable space, so happy to push you to this place for you to be able to share with us. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I wanted to just do a quick plug.
Yeah, so to close out the Q&A, what do you have going on? What do you want to plug?
So I do want to plug, so I lead a project called BCAN, the Baltimore Creatives Acceleration Network. And our focus is really positioning creatives to own their genius, build mindful creative enterprises so that they can shape our future, not only as a city, but as a world. And we currently have an opportunity available at this moment. Applications are open for our Scale Your Passion Fellowship Program, which is an 8-week business accelerator for creative entrepreneurs that are Baltimore-based. We go deep, we go hard, we definitely give a lot of critique, but we are doing it from a place of love and pushing you to grow. So please, please, please check it out at baltimorecreates.org. The applications close on Monday at midnight, so if you do still have time to get your application in, if you're interested in building your creative business, there's going to be travel opportunities. We're going to be going up to CultureCon, and there's going to be funding attached to it, mentorship, and it's just a great program. And there are 10 companies that will be accepted onto that. You can follow us on Instagram at Baltimore Creates if you don't already follow us. And we're constantly just posting opportunities for creatives, so definitely stay in touch and reach out if you're interested.
I think there's also some BCAN alumni in the audience too.
There are totally BCAN alumni in the audience. I see Emily here from Mira Kitchen Collective, so thank you so much for coming out to support. I see Brian here from Made in Baltimore, and Andy, Michelle, Impact Hub. We work in partnership with a lot of people. And also, just got to give a shout out. Oh, and Christina from Tola's Room. There's so many awesome people here making amazing creative things in the city, and we just want to keep rolling out resources to support them and their growth. And also, I just want to do a shout out to my team, because the reality is that we are a collective of collaborators who are very creative and very active in Baltimore. So shout out to Sharina Christmas, our Director of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, Crystal Carter-Word, who's our Storytelling and Engagement Manager, and Jazz Turk, who's our Entrepreneurship and Innovation Fellow.
Well, thank you again, Maggie, and shout out to all the good work that you're doing. Your bio is one of my favorites, so go read it, check out BCAN, read more about Maggie doing truly amazing things here in the city. We're lucky to have you.